We're in conversation with Carl Pei, the founder of Nothing. Now, before founding Nothing, he was also the co-founder of OnePlus, which is one of the most famous smartphone brands today. He quit sometime in 2020 to start up again. Carl, thank you very much for joining us on Moneycontrol. It's going to be nearly 3 years since you decided to start up again and you started up Nothing. Are things progressing the way you thought it would? You've already shipped an audio product, you have a smartphone. Are you on track? And how has your second journey as an entrepreneur been compared to the first one?
I actually see this as my first journey as an entrepreneur because this is the first time we have a startup company that started from scratch. We had to raise money, we had to build a team. So I think this is the first journey. And so far it's been ups and downs, but overall we're moving the right direction. I'm happy that we just went with it because we found out that it was a lot harder than we expected. And if we knew about all the challenges we would have faced, maybe we would have had some second thoughts.
What in your mind were the biggest challenges? Was it on the funding side? Was it on the product side itself? Because one would think that, this was already a very saturated market and it's very hard to succeed. Many phone companies haven't taken off, even by prominent names and prominent entrepreneurs. So what in your mind were your biggest challenges?
I think for me and my team, the biggest challenge has been supply chain, because that's not something that we had to deal with in our past experience. So it's been a very steep learning curve. On the other hand, I think the product side has been slightly less of a challenge than some people believe. Like you say, oh, it's a very saturated market, but according to us, it's not very saturated at all. And the way we see it is that, sure, there's a lot of big companies shipping a lot of volume, but all their products are very similar to each other. Nobody's trying to do anything different. So being the only company that's trying to push the needle, there's actually not a lot of competition.
And are you happy with the feedback and response you've seen so far?
You can always do better, or we can always do better. So I think it's okay, the feedback we've gotten so far. Recently, we also pushed an update in terms of our software on our phone, and the feedback has been better than the feedback we got previously, but we need to keep improving ourselves. So I'm looking forward to better and better reception for our products.
Right. In fact, even if I look at your cap table, the way it's evolved, the investors that you have are very interesting. At one end, you have your classic VCs and founders who have come in. Everyone from Google to Kunal Shah. And at the other end, you have prominent creators and, people from the creative field, from Karan Johar to, I think, Randeep Albadia. So was there a thought behind this, or, was it just the way it came together for you?
It was quite strategic. This is the way we planned it. In the beginning, we wanted more individuals to be a part of the journey because they could contribute their experiences and they could help us when we had problems in fields that they're experts in. And then over time, we took on more and more institutional investors. So this was always the plan. And we're building tech products for the young and the creative. So having that creative element is also really important for us because we want our users to be people with ambition, with creativity, who are looking to make something in this world. And having people who have already done so on our cap table is really helpful.
Right. In your previous conversations, you spoke about how the name Nothing came about. It came from your sister. But, was there concern among your investors? Why are you naming your company Nothing? Because it has a very negative connotation. It's used in negative ways. Yeah. So was there some pushback that, why don't you consider naming it something that has a more positive vibe?
Yeah, it was controversial for sure within our team as well as within some of our investors. But I just had to meditate on it, and ultimately, I think it turned out pretty good.
Yeah, and when you started up OnePlus, you didn't have anything to lose. You didn't have a reputation to stake. But when you started up Nothing, it was always going to be known as OnePlus founder Carl Pei's new startup. Is that constantly running in your mind in the way you evaluate risks or decide to take risks? I mean, coping with the fear of failure that, you have to get it right because people expect something magical to come from the OnePlus founders venture.
There's a lot of anxiety around failure, but not because of the past, more because we have a lot of people who believe in us. We have our team members who decided to give up their previous careers to join us. We have investors who put their money into our company. So the pressure to perform comes from there rather than the past, because I think our future ambitions are much bigger than what we've accomplished in the past. So that's not a concern.
And the way you look at the product development process, the way you sort of manage to galvanize the community of fans or people who like the product, tell me how you go about doing that in terms of building a brand and developing a community around a brand, something that you've done right from the OnePlus days.
So I think we get too much credit for building brand and building community. I think the fact of the matter is it's quite easy in our industry, because most people are quite bad. Most people, the barrier to entry to our industry is very high. So to have the resources to be able to play in our industry, there's only a handful of companies. So let's say you're creating a CPG company, like consumer product, then the bar to marketing and branding and community is much higher because everybody can make those products. So I think if you zoom out and look at the macro and among different industries, we're pretty average, but because our industry, people, they put more emphasis on supply chain, on engineering. So just being a little bit better than the rest of our industry makes us stand out.
What would your advice be to an entrepreneur who wants to build that kind of brand and wants to build a community around the brand? What are the 2-3 things that they perhaps need to get right?
The way I think about it is I look a lot at best practices and then we see what we can do better. So first of all, to have a deep understanding of each field that we're trying to play in. So let's say community management. What are the best brands in the world doing in terms of community management? How are we different from those brands, and how should we adapt those methodologies to ourselves? So it's quite general feedback, but I think that's the way I kind of go about thinking about solving problems. The reason why I don't want to give any specific feedback is other entrepreneurs, their businesses might be quite different from ours. So they should look at fields that have more relevance to them.
Right. You mentioned supply chain in the beginning. I also want to understand, in terms of the way you see the India market, clearly from a consumer perspective, you've mentioned how it's a big focus market for you. But also on the manufacturing side, investment side, supply chain side, what plans do you have for India? Because people are now talking about a China plus one strategy. So, how do you evaluate the India market in terms of the manufacturing ecosystem? Is it much better than what it was a few years ago?
I think long term, I'm quite bullish on the Indian economy because it's still a very young nation and it has a lot of future potential. So it's also a very, very big market for us. So we're manufacturing all the products we sell here in terms of smartphones locally. We're also looking at diversifying the other product ranges, whether we can manufacture them over here. So we're talking to multiple suppliers in terms of this. Currently, the ecosystem is still nascent. It's still developing. So in terms of the efficiency of the output and the cost, it's still not as optimized as other regions. So for instance, the cost per man hour is lower, but the output per man hour is also lower. And also the quality is not on par with other regions. But I think with the involvement of top tier brands or brands with high requirements, so with Apple manufacturing more and more of their products here, because other brands are kind of manufacturing the low end products here, but our products are more on the mid to high end. So more of these kind of manufacturing here in the market will make the entire ecosystem improve faster.
And in terms of the consumer market, is this one of your biggest markets in terms of users?
In terms of single country, it's our biggest single country, yeah.
Does that surprise you, or is it something that you...
It was within our plans in this stage of our development, because we didn't launch the US market for our first phone. So we knew India would be the biggest.
Carl, in terms of new products that we are seeing in the consumer tech space, it's been a long time since we've actually seen something that's radically new. I mean, Apple is, focusing on vertical integration, on how to kind of make their supply chains more efficient. why do you think that is? Is there a certain level of saturation in the consumer tech market? What are your own thoughts about this?
I think Apple's doing the right thing for their business. They're very mass market already, so they don't need to change, what already works. Instead, they should make it more efficient in terms of the tech stack, in terms of their margins. I think the reason why consumers perceive a lack of innovation is because there are no smaller brands in our industry apart from us trying to do things a little bit differently. Because big brands are just not going to take the risk. But in terms of new breakout categories, I think I reserve my opinion because every year there's some new hype and none of it has become the real breakout category. There's been VR, there's been drones, there's been crypto, there's been a bunch of stuff. So I don't know.
But nothing's really gone mass market, right? I mean, after the watch and the AirPods.
I would argue the watch hasn't really gone mass market either.
Yeah. But where would you like to see innovation happen? In the wearable category or the VR category or drone? Or where do you think there is scope?
I think for us, it's not the right time to think about it because we're in the very, very early stage of our company development. So we're not the ones who have the burden and the responsibility to invent the next category. We're here to take market share through a differentiated approach in the current category. One day when we have more free cash flow, then we should also invest and find innovation and new categories. But today it's the wrong timing. But having said that, I think the overall direction of technology should be to enable humans. So it should enable us to do things more efficiently, faster, easier, and not cause additional work or burden for us.
Right. After headphones and smartphones, what can we expect next from Nothing? I know the version 2 is coming in smartphone, but what next? What product will you look to attack?
I think we just got to keep making our products better and better. And this year, what I'm really excited about is that we're starting to innovate in terms of software. So I'm really looking forward to see how the market is going to react to some of our ideas when it comes to software.
Right. And have you been using ChatGPT? Have you been playing around with it? What do you ask ChatGPT?
Yesterday, I asked ChatGPT to write a Keynote Script as if Apple was launching a beer. And it did a really good job.
How did that go?
It did a really good job. It sounded like an Apple keynote, but it was launching a beer.
Right. Will you get ChatGPT to perhaps write your next speech? Have you tried that?
No, it's kind of boring because it just analyzes the past and creates a version of that, So I think we want to be more fun. I think keynotes are really boring, so hopefully we can do something more interesting.
Right. Carl, people have been talking about AI for a really long time, but this is perhaps the year when we are actually seeing this because of ChatGPT and generative AI and Google's talking about it. What impact will this have, on the way people consume technology? Have you been thinking about this? What are your thoughts?
I think AI is just as groundbreaking to technology as the invention of the smartphone is. But still today, we haven't found the killer app. I mean, we as a society, we haven't found the killer app. We're trying to force kind of AI into everything right now. And I think by this year, maybe one company or one team will find just one killer use case. I haven't seen it yet. I think chat is a cool proof of concept, but it's not real utility.
Right. And is there an Indian consumer tech company that you like or that you're impressed with?
Haven't really been paying attention, if I'm honest. I've been really heads down building this company.
Right. And is there a gadget that you bought recently that you liked? I know you bought a Samsung watch, but you were not very impressed.
I'm not wearing it. Nope, not really.
Nothing.
Nothing.
On that note, thank you very much for talking
Thank you.
to us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.